Welcome to the On a Mission Mojo podcast, where I have the pleasure of interviewing impact-driven founders, entrepreneurs, authors, and business experts who are actively working to create a positive difference in our world. I'm your host, Lori Young, a branding specialist, certified master marketer, and a passionate advocate for brands that possess heart, soul, and an unwavering commitment to drive change for humanity. It takes grit, a visionary mindset, and an abundance of mojo to navigate this journey. And the stories I share will undoubtedly ignite your passion. If you're seeking an infusion of inspiration, motivation, and valuable insights to amplify your impact, let's dive right in. Welcome to episode 37 of the On a Mission Mojo podcast. If you have felt recently depressed about low impressions on your social media, or maybe you feel anxious about actually keeping up with your social media or putting something out there on social media, we're going to have a great time today because we are going to have what we call social media therapy. And I have the most amazing guest with me today, Kate Gilbert. Her clients affectionately dub her a handholder / butt kicker for her unique blend of compassionate support and a can-do, no BS attitude. Kate empowers entrepreneurs to bring big ideas to life through one-on-one coaching, community events, and dynamic group programs, helping them post high-quality, engaging social media content and actually enjoy it. I can't wait.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Why don't we just start in maybe you could just share a little bit about your business, your mission, and like your story, kind of like why you do what you do.
So I am a business coach or strategist. I actually wear a lot of hats in my business, and I mostly work with solopreneurs, although sometimes there are small businesses as well.
Okay.
And people come to me and they're like, "Hey, can you do this?" And I say, "Yeah, I can." Most of the time, many of the times. Sometimes I say no, of course, and refer them to someone else. But my background is I ran an online knitting magazine for 10 years that I founded myself.
Okay.
And so I found that while I was doing that, I got kind of burnt out. It was exhausting. I was a one-person show with people who worked for me, and I found it really difficult after a while to get all the things done that I wanted to get done. And so now I provide the services that I wish I had had. I really wish I had someone in my corner to be like, "Okay, here's a plan, here's how you can do it, and keep going,"
Right. Okay. Very cool. So, as I said before, we're going to have social media group therapy. I can just say from my experience that I have been posting online social media content for 8 years,
Yeah.
at least like 8 years, right? And one of the things that and I've worked with clients on social media, and one of the things that I know can be difficult is knowing what to say and if it's okay to say something like online, like how much there's so much talk about building your personal brand and getting personal and really showing your authentic self. And I think a lot of clients struggle with what exactly does that mean? And how do we show up online authentically without like feeling, I guess, vulnerable about it?
Right. I mean, the boundaries are different for each person, and we each have to decide what makes sense for our business and how much of ourselves we feel safe sharing. For example, pretty much everybody knows that I'm a single mom and that I have a teenage daughter. The specifics of my daughter's life are extremely vague otherwise. I don't share her name. Even to the point that even on my personal profiles, I never shared a picture of her from first day of school because she went to a school with like a crest on the polo, and I didn't want people to know what school she was in. So,
Mm.
and now at this point, honestly, she's 19. I never share anything without her permission. So,
Mhm.
I think we all have to find the boundaries that make sense for ourselves. And for some people, I mean, I have someone who worked with me who blocked her own father on social media,
Oh,
which,
wow.
yeah, I mean, just for her work accounts, because he thought he was being supportive, but he would show up in her work posts and comment and say things that were really not helpful. And it was just
Mm.
kind of throwing her off her game and really like distracting everybody else from what her
Mhm.
message was. So she asked him nicely. She said, "Dad, please stop doing this." He would
Right.
not stop doing it. And so she's like, "Fine, you're blocked on my work accounts." And we all have to make calls like that make sense to us so we can feel safe. But one
Sure.
way I think a lot of us can feel um, more confident showing up is when we're super clear about what we're doing and
Mm.
why. It's really the why that's so important.
Mhm.
And so the very first thing I do with many of my clients is I have them write a manifesto. And I use
Mm.
that word really on purpose. Like, it's not a mission statement, it's a
Mhm.
manifesto. There are plenty of mission statements out there
Sure.
that are so vague they could be used for nearly any company. So I'm like, no, I want a manifesto. I want it to be fiery. I want a very strong point of view. And when you start from that place of
Mhm.
having a strong point of view and being very in touch with your mission and who you're serving, if you like the word serving in this case,
Yep, I
um
do. Uh-huh.
yeah, then I think it's so much easier to show up at that point. And for those of us who may be a little shy about the whole sales process and anything that is the asking for money bit, because there are
Mhm.
some of us who have, we can show up and post a picture of our lunch, but the minute we have to say, "Hey, I'm doing this thing, pay me money for it,"
Right,
then
right.
we get really uncomfortable. And if we can take away, like, if we can make it less about marketing and sales and more about the goals we're trying to achieve for other people and for ourselves, then I find it's the shift that a lot of people need
Mhm.
to make showing up and selling what they're doing a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I really like that you take your clients through the process of creating a manifesto. I had never heard about that before until I read this book called The Buddha and the Bad or yeah, The Buddha and the Badass or The Badass and the Buddha, something like that.
Okay.
And it's I don't know if you guys have heard if anyone's heard of the company Mind Valley, but it's written by the founder of Mind Valley. And he talks about the manifesto that he created in his business. And he
Hmm.
did this in the very, very early stages of his business when, like, it was super hard for him to attract talent. And that manifesto, like, made people just want to come work with them. It was so strong
Yeah.
about what he stood for and what the mission was in his company and what he was all about, just all encompassing, like everything, like what they stand for. It was, I mean, I read his manifesto and I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
want to work for that company. So that I think is very powerful that you do that. I personally have never written a manifesto for my business and I probably should. It
Yeah.
might help me get a little bit more clear.
Well, doing a manifesto workshop is something I've thought about, like, I've kicked around doing.
That's
So
cool.
if you decide that's a thing you want to do, you might convince me to finally launch it. But
Honestly, that I mean, I have not seen anybody online like teach that before to
Mhm.
actually teach how to do a manifesto. I bet you a lot of people like don't fully understand like
Yeah.
what it is, but I know just from reading that book that it's really powerful. Um
Yeah. When I started my magazine in 2008,
mhm,
um, it started because I won't bore you with the whole story. There was a whole thing about contracts and intellectual property and all that stuff with with the magazine I'd been publishing with, and things got left in a place where I was like, it's not okay for me to publish there anymore. So
mhm,
I started to think, well, I'll start my own magazine, which now looking back, I'm like, way to go, 2008, Kate, because it sounds like such
Exactly.
a crazy idea. And I had a 2-year-old at the time, keep in
Oh
mind.
gosh.
So, um, so I thought like, okay, uh, I'm going to start with a manifesto. And so I just like sat down and I just wrote like
Mm,
what I thought a magazine should be, how I thought a magazine should function, how designers, cause I was a knitwear designer and I was writing
okay.
hand knitting patterns. So how hand knitting designers should be paid, like the financial structure and the intellectual property stuff about the
Mm-hmm.
magazine, why people should want to read magazines, etc. I wrote this whole thing and it became the guiding document for the 10 years I ran the company, which is
Wow.
not to say I never messed up, but
Sure.
I do think that it made a lot of decisions easier and it gave us like that North Star that um I was always looking to follow and I was making decisions according to that. And if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't in line with my manifesto, I knew that I was like, if I got that uneasy feeling, I knew I was
Mm.
messing up.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's a big golden nugget for people to take away is just really focus on and understand what a manifesto is
Mhm.
and think about writing that for your business. So, one of the things that's online a lot, and that at least on LinkedIn, I would say, the majority of my time on LinkedIn. Some people are like huge Instagram
Mhm.
people, but I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and there is constant, constant talk about the importance of building your personal brand.
Right.
What exactly does that mean? Like, what is your version of like personal brand when it comes to like social media?
Well, for myself, quite honestly, there is not a lot of difference between Kate Gilbert, the person, and Kate Gilbert, the brand, because
Okay.
quite frankly, being 47
Mm-hmm.
and also a cancer survivor. And,
Mm.
at that point, I think I've hit this age and also some life experiences that have me at a place where I have no desire to pretend I'm anything I'm not. I have no
Mm-hmm.
desire to fake it. And so I just bring myself to my brand. That is my brand. That is it. Like it does, if it doesn't feel good for me to say it as a person, I'm not going to say it as a brand. So for me, it's one in the same, like,
Okay.
and it makes it a lot easier for me. And I find a lot of times when I work with, people who are having a lot of discomfort showing up online, it's because they think they have to show up a certain way and it's not a way that feels authentic to them. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we have to just like have that discussion of, okay, why do you think you need to show up that way? Is it
Okay.
because you're seeing other people do that? And if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel good to you, why are you doing that?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we have to have kind of a reset in terms of, um, expectations and that, people are coming to you for you, especially if you're a one person brand. People are coming to you for you. How many business coaches are there out there, really?
A
You
lot.
know, a lot.
Yes.
How many, courses are there online about like how to use social media or whatever. But I have a particular system that is unique to me that I developed for
Mm-hmm.
myself. I have a particular way of working with people. And so for me, it's all one thing. I don't do a lot of dividing there.
Right. Yeah, and a personal brand for me is I think I agree with you. Like, who I am
Hmm.
as a person is very much like layered through like
Sure.
my business content. So I think personally, one of the greatest ways to build a personal brand is to share stories
Yes.
online.
Well,
I mean,
stories are, I'm always telling people to share stories. Stories are like such a great way to share information because if we really think about it, we are like storytelling animals, really. And this goes all the way back to like sitting around the fire outside of the cave. And it's been shown scientifically that people retain information that is shared in story form
yes,
more than they do like a bullet point kind of thing. So, yeah,
absolutely.
sharing
And
stories
it's
can be so powerful.
yeah, and it's more engaging. I mean,
Mhm.
I know just from my own content, there's sometimes where I have kind of educational content that's, like the bullet point form,
Sure.
but the posts that I do that start with the story and share like a part of like who I am or maybe something that's happened in my life, those posts do 10 times better
Mhm.
than a strictly like educational post.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that there. I'm always telling people to share stories. I mean, I love a listicle or a bullet list
Yeah,
probably more than anybody,
right.
but sharing a story is such a great way to share like who you are, your values. And I find for myself, like when I share a story where I'm like a little bit vulnerable,
Mhm.
then that is a really powerful connection point as well. I mean, I'm not going out there and airing all my dirty laundry or whatever,
Sure,
but
of course.
and obviously there are things I keep private. I'm not somebody, I'm actually quite like, I'm an introvert. I'm in person. I'm actually quite shy, and
Mhm.
I'm not somebody who's going to go out and tell everybody everything.
Right.
But I share like what I share online is very authentic. And I do sometimes share stories. Like, for example, one time I put up a podcast recording. Like, this is a story I've told a couple times. I put up a podcast recording, and my my brain did like a record scratch, and I kind of
Okay.
paused in a weird way in the middle of saying something, and I
Mhm.
was super self-conscious about it. And um somebody contacted me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that. I love what you were saying." And it was somebody I knew well, and I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
it's too bad my brain did that record scratch." And she was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't even notice." So like I tell that story a lot
Mhm.
to my clients because we realize that, I mean, for that story, like nobody's paying as much attention to you as you are, and nobody's being
Yeah.
as hard on yourself as you are.
Yeah. I think that's something really important to
Mhm.
really embrace is that we feel vulnerable. We're putting out this content and we're judging ourselves
Mhm.
about whether or not it's good enough, whether or not people are going to like it. And we're
Yeah.
measuring the post on how many likes or loves or whatever we get.
Yeah. Should we have a
Let's
talk
talk
about
about
vanity
let's talk
metrics?
Yes, let's talk about vanity metrics cuz it's
Okay.
huge. I fall into the trap all the time because I've been taught as a marketer that you need to pay attention to your numbers, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to see if you're getting more followers. You need to see how much engagement you're getting on your post. But it can be a trap.
It absolutely is a trap. And I think we have to balance things. And I actually, so I have a program that's about social media systems and messaging. And
Mhm.
one of our last meetings is about data. And I talk about it. And the first thing I say is, if this data makes you feel bad, don't go look at it,
Okay.
or look at it when you feel safe to do so. This is not
Mhm.
something you have to do obsessively. I don't look at every single post I make. I post, I move on with my life, and I engage with people on that post, and I don't pay a ton of attention to the numbers. I go back and look every so often, but the
Mhm.
reality is, for example, there was a woman in she's like one of those influencers,
Mhm.
and I think she had like 2.6 million followers, and she
Wow.
wanted to start a clothing line. I wish I had 2.6 million followers, or maybe I don't. I don't know. But
Yeah, exactly. Maybe you
but
don't.
so, she wanted to start a clothing line. So she had to place a minimum order of 36 t-shirts. So
Okay.
2.6 million followers, 36, 35, I don't remember, t-shirts, no problem, right? That's like 1 in 27,000 if I remember the math
Mhm.
correctly. Um she could not sell 35 t-shirts. She couldn't do it.
Wow.
So when we think about like that, and compared to me, there was a brief period of time in between when I finished my magazine and before I started doing what I'm doing now, where I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. So I started selling cupcakes. Okay.
Mhm.
And my account for selling cupcakes had 1,000 followers. And
Okay.
I could make, like, depending on the weekend and what I was making, I could make a couple hundred cupcakes sometimes.
Mhm.
So statistically speaking, I was doing way better than her, even though my
Right.
follower count was significantly lower, my likes were a lot lower, but the math doesn't math for her, and it did for me. So,
Right.
we can't get too hung up on how we're doing. And the hang up I find a lot with people is how other people are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
the other people who are in their field who are supposedly successful,
Right.
we just don't know. They could have 2.6 million followers and thousands of likes, and their calendar could be empty. We really just
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
That's true.
So we have to
Very
stop
true.
telling ourselves stories about what other people's numbers mean and what our own numbers mean. Um, you have to evaluate for yourself. So I try to get people to just compete against themselves.
Mm,
And
okay. And what would that look like? What would that look like to compete against yourself?
so, I mean, I try to always have my follower count going up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I posted this, and I see what the response is. I
Mm-hmm.
try to approach my feed in a sort of like mad scientist kind of way, with
Okay.
like a sense of play and also like this whole sense of experimentation. And so I post something, I'm like, I wonder how this will do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see how it did. And then
Right.
I'm like, wow, I got no response on that. Okay. Um, then I try to think about it like a scientist would. And I would say, okay, I need to form a hypothesis. I wonder if this is because, I posted it at a weird time of day. I wonder if this is because my audience prefers video, or maybe this was the day that Biden dropped out of the presidential race, and everybody was talking about something else. Like, that's
Exactly.
not on me. So, I have to like go through a series of sort of questions I ask myself, and then I say, okay, here's what I've learned from this. Here's what I'm going to try next time. Here's how I'm going to change it up and see what happens. And as you go, you start collecting information. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can separate yourself and not make it mean something about like you personally, or your potential success, because
Mm-hmm.
vanity metrics are not a measure of your potential success as a business, nor are they a measure of your worth as a person. And I
I
think
like that.
some of us like walk away sometimes from social media feeling real bad about ourselves, thinking
Mm-hmm.
that we're telling ourselves stories. Actually, we're making it mean a lot more than it does.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so true. I like what you said about, your social media metrics are not indicative of you as a worthy person. Like,
Of
they
course.
just aren't. And I think the same goes with, financial success. Sometimes we get so like caught up in financial success, and are we making, 100,000, or are we making $1 million? Like, that's a measure of success. No, it's not. Like, we
Hmm.
can redefine success however we want, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the other thing people need to keep in mind is you just don't know who is watching and not
Mm,
clicking like and not commenting. I cannot tell you how many times people have reached out to me and
hmm
said, I want to be in your next sprint. When are you running it? Or I think I need a meeting with you, or I want to work with you. And I
hmm
did not know that they were even following me. I did not
Right.
know that they were even paying attention. They had never one time interacted with a post of
Mm,
mine. I had no idea. You just do not know who's watching.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the other things that I want to talk about with social media
Hmm.
is it can be very, very time consuming.
Yeah.
I write content, and I write my own content right now. I used to have my copywriters help me, but then I just decided, you know what? Nobody can really tell my stories.
Hmm.
And so it's just easier and better for me to write my own content. And
Right.
I can spend hours creating content. What like suggestions do you have? Because I'm always wrestling with this question of, is it worth it? Is it
Hmm.
worth the time that I spend creating content and engaging on other people's content to build a community? Is it worth it in terms of like the return on investment?
Well, I mean, obviously everybody has to do their own math in terms of the return on investment, but
Mhm.
my program, like the way I work is all about making things go faster, be better, and feel good. And
Mhm.
um so like first of all, I think many of us say too much. Like we are trying to make our posts like too long. We're trying to give too much information to people. And the reality is, people are only going to remember 1 to 3 pieces of information for each
Mhm.
post of yours that they see, if they even see it. And the other thing is that people are afraid to repeat themselves. They think like, "Oh, I've already said this 3 times." And then if you do a poll of your followers, like, very few of them will have actually noticed it.
Mhm.
Because first of all, every piece of content doesn't go to every single person.
Right.
and
Right.
and secondly, even if it does go to somebody, like if I'm sitting, we have to think about the space that other people are in when they're scrolling. And, think about yourself. If you're, a lot of us are like sitting on the couch, we've got a movie on, or the Sunday morning cartoons are playing, your kids are sitting in front of you, like, hey, mom, look at my Lego set,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Like
Mhm.
you're distracted, you're doing other things. We're not coming at social media as a consumer in the same way that you like sit down and read a newspaper even.
Sure. Sure.
And so even if I see somebody's post, I might kind of like, it might sort of register with me, but I might not fully like incorporate it. So if they say it again, I can be like, "Oh, wait, what's this?" And I
Right.
can, and different people need to hear things different ways. So we need to actually be repeating ourselves a lot,
Mhm.
a lot more than we think. And the other thing that I like to think about, if you'll if you'll have patience for my metaphor, is that Lori, if I told you that when I do my laundry, like I put one shirt in the washer and I wash it and then I dry it and then I take it out and I hang it up, and then I put my jeans in the washer and I wash them and then I dry them and I go fold them and put them away, you would think I was a lunatic, right?
I'd say, well, I think there might be a little bit more efficient way to do that.
Right. So if we approach our social media, like a lot of people are approaching their social media that way, they're waking up and saying, "Oh crap, I need to post today. I haven't posted recently. What am I going to post?" And then they figure it out and then they write a post and they're like, "Oh, this is going to be fine. I'll just get that out there and like
Mhm.
make a thing and put it out." So first of all, they're not doing as good a job as they could have, probably.
Sure.
They haven't really thought through their messaging as like a flow of messages that are kind of come out.
Mhm.
Over time, and then they're like pushing it out there and then they do it all over like the next day or the next week. So instead, if you can try to think in terms of monotasking. um
Okay.
there are days where writing comes very easily to me, and
Mhm.
so those are the days that I write content. There are
Yes.
days when I think very like I have more of a clever mind, I guess, where
Sure. Mhm. Of
I
course.
can think like metaphorically, or I can plan out things. And those are the days that I plan things. So I take my clients through a process of like planning their messaging, like what are the messages we are going to share, in what order, and then you write all, you go through and start writing the messages, like as
Mhm.
many as you can as at one time, and then you go through and start creating the content, because like the graphics or the video or whatever, because then I can batch my video. I can say, "Oh, this template, this post I just made, there's a similar post later on, and I can repurpose that template later on." And it all becomes so much more orderly
Mhm.
and so much faster. You can save, I swear, like 40% of your
Oh
time
yeah, by
doing that
just
kind of
like
thing.
you said, like monotasking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like there are days when literally when I think about writing content, I'm just like, I have nothing. I have
Yeah.
nothing. I have nothing to say. I have no creativity today.
Mhm.
It's just not there. And
Yeah.
then there's other times where it's just like, oh, like right now I have a story that I want to share, something that
Mhm.
happened to me. And it's just like, oh, easy, easy peasy. Like I will knock that post out in 10 minutes. Right.
Mhm.
Um, one of the things that you said that I want to talk about because oh my god, this is like weighing on my mind, and that is video.
Okay.
Um, everybody, at least on LinkedIn, that's the big advice. Oh, you need to be doing video. You need to be doing video. If you're not going to make it in this on social media if you don't start doing video. Well, I haven't started doing video other than like my podcast episodes, and
Yeah.
it's in the back of my mind constantly. And I think, and I get it, like, with the rise of AI and not knowing whether or not people are actually writing the content themselves
Yeah.
or if it's AI like writing content, video is a no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah, because
And they get to
what an
experience you.
opportunity we have right now, honestly, like where people's trust is low because of AI,
Hmm.
because, I can even fake my own voice. I can use like 11 labs and type in something and have my voice. I can train it on my voice and say it. And there are lots of good reasons for people to use that kind of thing. I know someone who needs it because of a disability, but
Sure.
um, but yeah, video is a lot harder to fake. And also, but we really have an opportunity right now to show up as ourselves and show
Hmm.
up with authenticity and connect with people. People want connection. And we can't forget social media is meant to be social, right? It's like social should be the key word. So we want to be doing what we can to make our social media a connection point and not just here's my lunch, like,
Right.
or whatever. But what's stopping you from making video? Is it just time, or it's because you don't know where to get started?
My God, there's so many things stopping me from doing video. And number one is time.
Hmm.
Number two is perfectionism,
Okay.
wanting to show up and look perfect or sound perfect and not make any kind of ums or that kind of thing. And I think number three is how to effectively record a video that people will listen to. Like,
Okay.
I don't want to be a rambler on video of like going on
Oh,
and
please
on
don't be a
because
rambler.
yeah, people will just completely tune out. I want to
Yeah.
be able to be succinct, like hook points, close
Yeah.
and be done. And I just cannot wrap my brain around it.
Well, I mean, first of all, it takes practice,
Hmm.
and I think one of the best ways to practice is to start making live videos. Um, because you can actually like delete those immediately if you want to, or you can leave them up to share. But um,
Like live videos on Instagram
yeah,
or
that's one of
where
the easiest ways. Like, it's one of the fastest ways to make content because all I need to do to make a live video on Instagram is know what I'm talking about, and
that's the key for me.
yeah. And well, if you have your messages planned, then you know what you're talking about. And then I take a
True.
post-it note and I write down like my bullet points on my post-it note because the minute I hit record, my brain is like it's down the street. I'm
Right.
gonna forget
Right.
what I'm saying. So I actually take this and I put it like just below my camera so I
Hmm.
can't even see my face. And then I can like look at the camera and have my notes just below. And
That's
I don't,
Oh my God. Like I would have never thought about that of putting like a post-it note
yeah.
on your now I see in the past I did video
Hmm.
and I used big, I think it's called Big VU.
Yeah.
Um and I was able to script my videos and I got pretty good at like reading the script,
Yeah.
but oh my God, like I don't have time for that. Like
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, you have to take the time to write the script and you have to put
yes.
it into your app and then you have to read it and then you're going to be hard on yourself if you mess it up. And
Right.
the reality is, what's more interesting for everybody else? If we think about who's watching you, would you rather listen to me say, if you're doing laundry and you take you know what I mean? Or would you rather listen to the story the way I told it to you?
Right.
Because
Exactly.
no, like only the like most skilled people can take something they're reading and speak with the same passion and intonation that they do when they just speak normally.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
save yourself the time. Don't write a script. Just write yourself a couple bullet points and just record the thing. And then point two, I think you said perfectionism was your point
Yeah.
two. Yeah.
Hmm.
So first of all, nobody cares as much as you do. Like
Right.
nobody's paying. Do you remember? Like I actually use this in when I do my social media group therapy workshop, I actually use this. I call it the junior high lunchroom rule.
Mm,
So you
mhm.
remember how you felt in the junior high lunchroom where you're like, oh, is everybody looking at me? Is,
Right.
did they notice that zit on my face? Is my hair a mess? Whatever. Who am I going to sit with? We were all doing that, right?
Yes.
Everybody was doing it. The reality was you were rarely judging anybody as harshly as you were judging yourself. So social
Right.
media still is kind of like the junior high lunchroom there. So we have to just sort of let go of it and think about the
Mhm.
advice you would give to 13-year-old Lori. Like, what would you have told 13-year-old Lori? And take that advice.
Right.
So you don't have to be perfect. Like we talked about, people want authenticity at this point. People want real people. People also want to know that you screw up, you know, like,
Yeah.
because it'll make them feel better about messing up. It's fine. One of my clients, actually, her most popular reel she has ever made, she's like a kitchen coach. And one of her most popular reels she's ever made is her taking all of the like lettuce that went bad in the fridge and all the things she didn't get around to making and putting it in the compost. And she's like, I messed up this week. And and it's one of her most popular videos. People love it because, they thought, well, she's perfect and she eats well every
Mm,
day and her family
right.
always eats
Exactly.
everything that goes in their fridge instead of the lettuce renting space in the drawer. And
Right.
she's like, no, I mess up too. People love it. So let go of perfectionism. And what was your third point? I can't
I
remember.
think my third point was wrapping my head around doing effective
Oh,
video,
right.
like
Yeah.
having a structure
Yes.
that that is efficient and effective so that I'm not like rambling or
Right.
sharing too much information. Like, do you
Right.
have a
So,
particular structure that you use?
okay. Well, I try to think about, obviously, you need a hook. We all talk about hooks. And the way I try to
Hmm.
think about it in terms of video is I never introduce myself first thing.
Okay.
I think that is the number one mistake you can make. Do not, nobody cares who you are until they care who you are, if you know
Right.
what I
Okay.
mean, right?
Yes.
So I never begin with an introduction. I don't say hi. Sometimes I mess up and I do say hi, but
Hmm.
get right to the point. People they want to know what they're there for immediately. And if you don't tell them quick enough, they're going to scroll. So
Right.
it's almost like we have to tell the punchline first, um, like of the joke. We have to tell the punchline and then we have to set up the story and explain, like, here's how I did this, or um, I totally messed up and you should see my compost bucket this week,
Right.
or whatever. You want to start very quickly with kind of what they're there for so they know why
Hmm.
they should stay. What's in it for them to stay? Is it going to be funny? Is it going to be educational? What are they going to be able to walk away with? If they don't
Hmm.
think they're going to be able to walk away with something that's for them, they're not going to stick around.
Sure.
And
Sure.
if you're boring or ramble, then they might stay a bit if you set it up well, but they might not stay for long. So we want to tell them, like, keep in mind the 1 to 3 pieces of information thing.
Hmm.
And we want to tell them as little as possible. And the thing is like, instead of making one super long video talking about like, here are the top 5, I mean, you could do like the top 5 reasons if you do them briefly, but then you can also, um, do like videos that are broken down about that. Like, I want to
Sure.
talk more about number 1. So,
Yes.
we want to try to keep it as brief and as useful as possible. And then, if you really need to, you can introduce yourself after your hook, or you can even introduce yourself partway through or at the end. You can say, if you don't know me, my name's Lori Young and this is what I do, and then move on. Like,
Okay.
it
Right.
should be like, it should be very brief and then move on. But I really think one of the easiest ways to get good at this is to do lives. And Instagram does actually have a practice live where it goes to nobody. You could do it
Oh,
there.
interesting.
Yeah. But I'm all for like jumping in the deep end, like just do it live. And the other thing we have to keep in mind if we're doing lives is we don't care if nobody is watching. It does not matter,
Okay.
because the video will be saved and other people will see it later. I have lives that I did that I swear like one person came in and looked, or two people,
Right.
like nobody really stuck around. If I got up in my head about that, then I would immediately like get distracted and whatever. But in fact, they were really well performing posts for me
Mm,
after I saved them to the grid and other people saw them later. So,
got it. Got it. Those are definitely some very helpful video tips. There's one other question I want to cover
sure.
because it's talked about a lot on social media, and I know it's something that I personally struggle with. So I would imagine if I'm struggling with it, that other people are too.
Hmm.
And that is the advice on regarding social media is that you should have a core topic and stick to that core topic so people know you for your core topic. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think your core topic can be relatively large though. Like I don't I mean my program for example is not an Instagram program. It's a platform agnostic program. It can be used for, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, even if you want, or it's not Twitter, X, like whatever
Hmm.
you want to use it for. It can be used in all different kinds of ways. So like I could really niche myself down and go online and only talk about Instagram or something like that. But the reality is, um, I don't just do social media even. Like people come to me for business coaching. People come because currently I'm offering like a power hour, and I had somebody who said I need a plan for the rest of the year, and I said great, let's make it. you know um
Hmm.
or I'm thinking about doing a course, but I need someone to talk it out with. Super, let's make it happen. Like, so I don't generally go online and talk about courses, even though I do help people with their courses sometimes. So
Hmm.
I feel like my big thing I talk about is a little bit nebulous sometimes. I talk about time management, like I talk
Hmm.
about motivation, I talk about mindset, because I feel like all of those things play into our business. I'm not going to go online and only talk about social media. So, um, my feeling is as long as it feels good to you and makes sense, then sure. If I went online and started talking about like saving the elephants, people might be like, what is this about?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I feel
Right.
like as long as it kind of makes sense to you, it'll make sense to other people. And it may give you information that's useful to you. Um, for example, if my time management posts started really blowing up, I might start to think, oh, well, maybe I should do a workshop about this, or maybe,
Mm-hmm.
clearly this is something that my audience wants to hear about. So what's that mean for what I'm
Right.
offering?
Yeah. And of course you can always tie time management back to social media. I have
Sure.
had actual people, because I have such a strong business background in so many different areas. There's
Right.
so many things that I can talk about. I can talk about operations and systems. I can talk about, hiring and building a great team. I can talk about like marketing, best practices for, holistic marketing. I've been on this planet for a while, and I've been in business my entire life. And so I have a lot of information. But what I find is that I feel like when I talk about all those different things, like
Hmm.
nobody knows me for any one thing. They just know me that, oh, she talks about this and she talks about that and she talks about
Yeah.
this and that. Like, what does she do? I don't know.
Well, I think the question I always have to ask myself is, why am I sharing this information? What is the point of it? Like, what is the use of it to my audience? And as long as you can justify that, I don't think it's necessarily a problem to share it. And then also, does it tie back to the things that I'm offering to people? If you're not in your business, if you're only doing marketing stuff and you're not helping people hire a team, I wouldn't be talking about hiring a team, except that
True.
like
Hmm.
for like how it ties into marketing maybe. um I have seen people, I've heard a lot of other business coaches be like, you have to niche down, it has to be like, you have to be extremely specific, and I'm sort of like, I'm not sure that works for everybody.
Okay.
Right.
Hmm.
um, I mean, I feel like my niche is mission driven entrepreneurs, mostly women,
Hmm. Hmm.
who want to make big things happen and want to help other people. and they can be coaches. I've worked with people in all kinds of fields. It can mean all different kinds of things. I've worked with someone who's a quilt designer,
Hmm.
and when she did her manifesto, she actually had one of the best manifestos I've ever seen about
Mm.
why quilting was an absolutely like vital thing about personal expression and all that. It was brilliant. And
Hmm.
I was really expecting it to come in and be like myth, and it was great. So, I've decided my niche is people like that who like me, you know?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like to me, it's like I always say, I serve the industry of change makers. Like,
Yeah, I
you
love
know
that.
what? And change makers is huge. Are you impacting humanity for good? You're a change
Yeah,
maker. A lot of people
yeah,
don't necessarily see themselves that way, but they are. That can be authors, it can be speakers, it can be coaches, it can be nonprofits. People, those are my people, the difference
yeah,
makers in the world. And no, it's not a specific industry,
right.
unless I make it. To me, it's the industry of change makers.
Yeah. I mean, I think as long as you can justify why you're sharing a piece of information, how it's going to benefit your audience, and it feels
Hmm.
authentic to you to share, then I don't actually think you can go wrong.
Okay. Okay. Well, this has all been great. Is there any other like nuggets or something that you feel like you need
Hmm.
to leave the audience with in terms of social media?
Okay. I'm going to give you one of my favorite rules, so to speak, that I share
Okay.
in my social media group therapy workshop.
Okay.
So, I don't know if this is you or not, but have you ever played like Candy Crush or some kind of phone game?
Yes, I've played Candy Crush before until
Okay.
it got so difficult that I got frustrated and stopped.
Right. And so did you blame yourself when you quit Candy Crush, and did you think like I'm not that smart and
No,
I'm a no,
no.
of course not. That would be ridiculous. If you lost a
Right.
level in Candy Crush, you would not walk away thinking like I'm a terrible person and not very
Right.
smart. So the reality is that social media and phone games, they're both algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can look at social media the same way we look at a phone game and be like,
Right.
okay, sometimes they make it easy for you to win and they
Hmm.
push your content out far. Sometimes they make it a lot harder for you to win, so to speak,
Right.
where you think you
Right.
have to pay to win to reach
Hmm.
that next level. So, but none of it actually relates to me. Like, it doesn't mean anything about me. So, that's like the very distilled version of my Candy Crush rule.
Got it. I love that Candy Crush rule. In other words, like, don't blame the algorithm for
Mhm.
your, maybe lack of engagement or whatever. Pay attention and learn from your content, but also don't like think that the algorithm is not at play, because it absolutely is.
For sure. But we just have to not keep pushing the story to the point where we're thinking it means something about the potential success of our business or our value.
Right.
Um, because you can have a successful business without social media.
Hmm.
But social media can also it's a tool that's extremely useful. And, the weird thing is I'm not the person who loves social media, which is kind of why I'm good at doing
Ironic.
what I do.
Uh-huh.
Because like I approach it very much like this is a tool. Here's how I'm going to use this, and here are ways you can use it. Here's how you can use this sword without cutting your own hand off.
Okay.
Like
Got it.
let's make this work for you.
Right. Absolutely. So this has been awesome. I think I feel much better. Like I feel
Oh,
like I've
good.
been through a group therapy session, and I feel much better about social media. So I want to close the interview and just ask you what I ask all of our guests, because we are on a mission mojo.
Mhm.
What is your mojo or your magical superpower that you bring to the world?
I think I'm really good at looking at other people's chaos, whether that be like mental overwhelm or disorder in their systems and ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them find a path through and make a map to go where they want to go and getting them energized and on their way. I
That's a
jokingly sometimes say I'm a business therapist because just last night I was on a call with someone who was like, "Does everybody cry?" And I'm like, Well, not everybody does, but a lot of
We,
people have.
yeah, we all do at some point, I think, in our business. Like we do cry
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'm good at helping people change their own story and make an actually actionable plan that isn't based on pay $500 a month for the super expensive software or,
Right.
that kind of thing. I help people find a way to do it themselves.
Awesome. I love it. So thank you again, Kate, for being on the show. And I just appreciate all of your insight and all of your wisdom around social media.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for tuning in to the On a Mission Mojo podcast. Ready to dive into more incredible stories of people on a mission? Next week, I'll return with a fresh episode to ignite your passion for creating a better world. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a glowing review, and spread the word to all your friends. Head over to onamissionbrands.com for more great episodes. Remember, the world needs your mojo, so go out there and let your brilliance shine.